All right.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This your boy Jay Mason. Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Album Cover, where we get inside the entertainment industry with those in the know and give them their flowers while they're here to be celebrated. With me right now, I have a DJ that cuts and scratch unlike no other. Originally from up top, now making his way known in NC, lives in NC actually. My boy, we're gonna chop it up with the one and only DJ Mix Mash. Mix Mash, welcome to Beyond the Album Cover, bro, and thank you for coming on, man.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, brother. I appreciate you.
Man, it's no problem, man. How you doing?
I'm good, man. Like we said earlier before we got started, it's a little hot out here, but I'm just trying to stay cool. And when you and I get off this thing, I'm definitely gonna crank on the air condition. But other than that, I'm good, man. How you holding up?
I'm doing good, man. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come on the podcast and do the interview. And I want to send a big shout out to my boy DJ Earn. Whether you know it or not, Earn, you're kind of like the middleman that kind of had us linking up. So shout out
Yeah,
to
yeah.
DJ
Seriously.
Earn.
Shouts to DJ Earn 102. Salute to
Yes,
him.
yes, sir. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So tell the people where you're from and where did your love of music and of hip hop culture start?
So I'm originally from Jersey. Um, my mother and father, I grew up in a household, two divorced parents. My mother lived near Philadelphia, and my father lived near New York City. So my mother was in South Jersey, and my dad was in North Jersey. And I spent the weekdays with my mom, and like every other weekend with my father. And what the love for the music came from a couple of different places. You know, in the beginning, my mother was playing record, like she had a record collection herself, but also in the car she was playing stuff like Phyllis Hyman, Lionel Richie, and also like when I was a baby, she would also play me classical. And then, as far as the hip hop side of things would go, my father would used to have cassettes of cats like Red Alert, Chuck Chillot, Mr. Magic, Marley Marl, and when I was younger, I used to listen to Barney and Sesame Street. And after a while of my father hearing them, "I love you, you love me," he was like, "Hey, let's put on something new," because he got sick and tired of that. And eventually, he put on a cassette of Cool DJ Red Alert doing his thing on Kiss FM in New York City. For those of you that are familiar with the sounds of that, so that's what really got me into doing what I do.
Yeah, man. I mean, those kitty tunes would make you want to drown out. And your pops made the right call by saying, I'm going to turn you on to something like this.
Exactly. Exactly. So that was the sounds that I was introduced to as a kid. So, shouts to Pops, shouts to Cool DJ Red Alert, a good friend of mine years later, but we're gonna get into that a little later on. And just shout out to my mother for putting me on to the love of the classic soul, like, the Commodores and all that jazz.
Yeah, man. And thinking of Jersey, I kind of think Jersey's contribution to hip hop often gets overshadowed by everything that came out of New York. But
Yes.
when you look at the beginning of hip hop, if it wasn't for Sugar Hill Records, Sylvia Robinson, no
Hmm.
Sugar Hill Gang, no Rappers Delight, all the stuff that came out of Sugar Hill Records, you know, hip hop wouldn't be where it is today. So we got to put some respect on Jersey.
And also, you got to give a shout out to people like the Flavor Unit, Lati and Apache. They made the Gangsta B and then Double X Posse. So there's a bunch of people that was really making noise. Shouts to Queen Latifah and rest in peace to the 45 King. A few key people from Jersey.
And of course, Redman from
Yep.
Jersey. I
Yep.
believe Laws of the Underground from Jersey.
Yep. There's a
And with
lot of
just
people from Jersey that's really made noise.
mm,
Noise.
hmm yeah, and we was talking about Sugar Hill Records earlier, but I don't know if you know, but before Naughty by Nature became Naughty by Nature, they went by the name The New
The new
Style,
style.
and they
Yep.
put out a record on Sugar Hill Records, and I believe that was Indie was making some noise up in the tri-state. Then of course they rebranded as Naughty by Nature, and then that was all she wrote once they took off of OPP
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
from
It's
Jersey
true.
as well.
Mm-hmm.
and also Poor Righteous Teachers out of Jersey as well. So it's a lot of folks out of Jersey that's been doing their thing. And looking at it from the hip hop lens, New York is the epicenter. And it started, of course, in the Bronx, as they say, doing the back to school party for DJ Kool Herc's little sister in the basement of Sedgwick and Cedar, back to school jam. And they were Jimmy Riggin, the electronics out in the park. Now we can't say the other word, but you know. But everybody was going out to the park jams, and those tapes were circulating all throughout the boroughs, and even when you had the OJs. Now the OJs, they were pre-Uber, pre-Lyft, the first iteration of Uber and Lyft, where you can rent out a car or you could call somebody, say, hey, I want to go ahead and use you to take me here and there. And the OJs would have these mixtapes in the car. And that's how hip hop started to spread beyond the Bronx and all to the different boroughs because of those vehicles.
Yep, yep. You were right about that. You were absolutely 100% correct. And one of the things my father, I remember him telling me, was way back when he used to be, whether it be playing basketball on the court or, riding his bike, you could hear that music for blocks away. And him and his crew used to just go to the park, chilling there, and just listen to the sounds of the DJs playing. Shouts to Grandmaster Flash, shouts to Bambaataa, shouts to Kool Herc. There's a bunch of cats that was really laying it down, the foundation of hip hop, back in the day.
And then it also should be instrumental to mention the link between hip hop and reggae with Kool Herc coming from the island, bringing in the tradition of reggae with the sound system, with the toasting and the selectors and all of that, and how incorporating that into hip hop really set the stage for what was to later come for all the DJs that followed after him. But I would be remiss if we didn't mention those early pioneers in addition to Kool Herc, like Pete DJ Jones,
Rest in peace.
Grand Wizard Theodore, DJ Flowers,
Grandmaster Flowers.
Grandmaster Flowers, Love Bud Starsky. We could go
Rest in
on and
peace.
on all of the pioneers that laid the groundwork, because and DJ Hollywood as well, and just how it originally started out as a underground scene where, because of music programs getting cut in schools, New York at that time looked like a third world country with buildings getting burnt down, looking bombed out, and no instruments is in the schools. But once that blackout happened in, I believe, 77, a whole lot of crews came up on some DJ equipment. If you
Yeah,
know, you know.
it was July 13th, actually. How many days? It will be one, two, three, like 4 days from today will make the anniversary of that blackout. So 49, no, yeah, 48 years ago.
Yeah, which is crazy, because hearing the stories from a lot of the older cats that was out and about when that was going on, it was like everybody was raiding, Crazy Eddie's or whatever electronics store at the time, and you had a whole bunch of DJ crews that were springing up overnight, and it was a great alternative to what was probably taking place during that time frame of like the gang culture, and how, if you remember the movie The Warriors, that whole culture was still prevalent during that time frame. So a lot of them ended up taking that lifestyle, flipping it, and turning into positivity with hip hop. And a lot of the early pioneers, as we mentioned, will rent out, armories, school gyms, have park jams, authorized and unauthorized. And those mixtapes made their way around boroughs, and then it spread to all other parts of the country, and then later the world, because during that time, it was where, when once one tape dub was made, somebody said, hey, where you hear this? I heard it from XYZ. And they want a copy, and you make a copy, and then it spreads. And of course, all those DJs were probably not making no bank, but the person who was making the dubs was making the killing. But on some of those older tapes that I would hear online, they would make sure to know, like, hey, no biting, no copying my stuff. Because if they found out that somebody was copying that dub, somebody was gonna get paid a visit by JB's boys, so to speak. If you see Crush Groove, then you know who I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. 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 That's true. That is all true. And even Wild Style is an important hip hop movie too, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, Wild Style and Fat Five Freddy is an important figure in hip hop because he was the one to able to merge uptown with downtown because he was in with the hip hop scene and in with the downtown scene at CBGBs with Blondie and Television, Dead Kennedys, all those acts performing down there, and how punk and rap have the same expressions and experiences of music that speaks for rebellion is not made for the masses to understand, and both ended up becoming commodities in the music industry. And then when Blondie introduced rap to a more mainstream audience with Rapture, once it debuted on MTV, that was where a whole new audience got to see this new genre up close. And then also because of Blondie, the Funky Four plus one more got to be the first rap guest to be on Saturday Night Live.
Yep. 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 It's true. Excuse me.
Yeah, you're all good, bro. And but like I said, Fat Freddy's contribution should not be understated. And also, too, he was the host of Yo MTV Raps, which was the weekly version that he was hosting. And then once the ratings for that became so successful, they wanted to do a daily version of Yo MTV Raps. And to prevent burnout, Fat Freddy was like, "Nah, I'm not gonna do it." And that's how Ed Lover and Dr. Dre ended up getting the daily version of Yo MTV Raps.
And you know what's funny? I know Dr. Dre. Shouts to him. I ain't spoke to him in a while. I owe him a call. But shouts to Dr. Dre. He is doing his thing. He's speaking out against diabetes. So shouts to him.
Yeah, shout out to Dr. Dre and Dr. Dre, along with T Money and Proper T, original
Yep.
concept.
Yep. Yep. That's it. That's it. That's it.
Yep, yes, sir. Pump that bass, and it was an all instrumental record, but a lot of people that grew up in the tri-state knows about that record. Now let's transition back to those tapes you mentioned earlier of Red Alert, Chuck Chill Out, and Marley Marl. Now, were you more prone to listen to more of the Kiss tapes or the BLS tapes, or were you a fan of both?
You know what? It's so funny, and I never was asked this question in an interview. Um, I for years, I wondered what was better. But sitting here as a grown man talking to you now, I think Kiss and BLS had they were good for different reasons, you know?
Mhm.
Like Red Alert, um, and Flex said it too at one point. Red Alert was king of them shout outs. Like if anybody goes on YouTube or if anybody that's listening may have some old school Red Alert tapes, if you ever go on YouTube and you hear a Red Alert show from like the 80s, you can hear Red Alert has like 100 drops. Yo, it's Public Enemy. Yo, it's Melly Mel. Yo, it's so and so. And you checking out Cool DJ Red Alert on 98.7 Kiss. And even like his son was doing the My Daddy's Name is Red Alert. And you're listening to like Red Alert had drops out the wazoo. The thing with Chuck Chillout was Chuck was good for playing them street records, like those records that had that feel. You know what I'm saying? Because
Mhm.
I can tell you, I know I don't. I'm not as close with Marley, but I'm close, more close. I'm closest to Red out of everybody. But Chuck Chillout is that type of dude where he has that mentality. Like Chuck is like, look, no, no, like I'm speeding down the West Side Highway, copping a mean look, and I'm blasting Public Enemy out the car. Like that's who. If you ever have the chance to meet Chuck Chillout is that type of guy. You know, that's who Chuck Chillout is. But to answer your question, I think as far as mixing goes, Molly Mall and Magic had it down packed. But as far as like the shouts and everything, because like I said, they were all like Red and Marley and Magic, they were good. But I think like as far as the cleaner of the techniques were Marley and Magic. But Red Alert and them had them shout outs on lock. But I'm gonna tell you what really was what changed my mind and converted me to BLS. If you remember, Mr. Magic was on WBLS from 1982 to 80, late 88, early 89. Then after they let Magic go is when Marley brought in Pete Rock and did In Control. And those In Control, listen, I love Red Alert. I love Chuck Chill Out. I love Sammy B from the Jungle Brothers because Sammy B used to fill in for Red Alert at times. But when Marley put Pete Rock on In Control, that's when In Control turned into something. That's when BLS really. That's when BLS turned Kiss's lights out. I'm sorry, but In Control was something special with Pete Rock and rest in peace Clark Kent, and then you have my man Kevy Kev. So, but I say that to say I liked BLS and Kiss for different reasons.
Right, because you can like both, and I'm sure a lot of folks in that prime were trying to debate: do I record Rap Attack or do I record Red Alert and Chuck Chill Out? Because you had one 120 tape, and you couldn't do both, so you had to choose. You had to make sure you got your dial position just right on the tuner, the antenna up in the right spot at the house, and you had your finger on play and record at the ready, because it was
Well,
serious.
if you were lucky, like some people I know, you had two radios where you could record Red Alert and Chuck Chilla on one box, and then you record Magic and Marley on another box at the same time. So if you were lucky to be in that position.
Yeah, yeah, I'm just trying to picture that you having two boxes recording two separate shows. There'll probably be some sound clashing going on because you dubbing two shows at the same time, and you got to keep an eye on both boxes to know when to stop and flip the tape.
I mean, like I said, I know a few people that have had two radios where they were taping Red Alert and Chuck and Magic and Marley. And I even know another DJ who lived in Philly. No, not Philly. He lives in Philly now. But he lived in South Jersey in like a boondocks part of South Jersey. And he was actually able to get Mr. Magic and Marley and Red and Chuck on a good night because when on the New York radio stations, let's forget iHeartRadio. If you're in the car, you can get WBLS and Hot 97 from New York, northern part of New Jersey, and a small part of Connecticut. So to get that in South Jersey was a treat, for him. But
Yeah,
that's that.
yeah, because it sounds like from the part of Jersey he's at, he's probably getting more of the Philly stations like Power 98.
And Power 99, yeah, yeah.
Power 99, excuse me.
Yeah, you were thinking of Charlotte Power 98.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking of Power 98 Charlotte, but Power 99 right out of Philly.
Yeah, and then you had was it Lady B and
Lady B Street Beat.
and Kobe Cove and
Mm-hmm.
Cosmic and Lady
Cosmic
shots to
Kev.
Lady B, Cosmic Kev, Lady B and Cosmic Kev. They're still doing their thing on the box on the
Yeah,
radio.
yeah. And then a lot of people said that outside of New York, if you could break the Philly market, you were good too.
Yes, yes, that is true. That is true. That is
Why do you
true.
think that is?
I mean, I think probably because New York and Philly, like I think Philly is kind of different than New York, but they're kind of the same in both aspects. Because you got to think about it. I could be wrong, but going from New York to Philly is like the equivalency of going from Greensboro to Raleigh, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
So, not that they're necessarily in the same geographic location, but they're kind of within the same, not even area, but like I don't know how to. You get what I'm saying? Like they're kind of in the
Yeah.
same pocket, if you will.
Hmm. And
So,
you got to mention all the DJs come out of Philly. You got the great, the magnificent Jazzy Jeff,
as he Jeff, yep.
DJ Cash Money, the
That's my
host of
that's my
all
favorite
this.
DJ of all time. Cash Money, my favorite.
hmm Check out the DMC. I think it was 88
It
where
was
he did
88.
88 where he did the routine with I'm Bad, and of course his signature cut up of Rock the Bells, which a lot of
Yep.
DJs have said I've studied that and try to do a rendition of that as homage to you. But man, that's like some of the best cutting and scratching I have ever seen.
I would agree. I would agree. I would agree.
And then also too, Philly was important for New York rappers too because of a little label called Pop Art. Because
Yep.
if you remember, Craig G put out a record called Shout, and that was
Yep.
released on Pop Art, and a lot of early hip hop records was put out on Pop Art out of Philly.
Pop Art put out the Juice Crew. Well, not all the way, but like put out some of their records, like
hmm
in the beginning. So I,
hmm
because look, I didn't want to mess up the history, but Pop Art put out a lot of people. They put out Roxanne Shante. They put out Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. They put out a couple people. Pop Art.
hmm
Shouts to the Goodman brothers. That's what it was. Dana and Lawrence from in
hmm
Philly. So
Right, right, and then
very
also
influential.
right, very influential. And then also during that time as well in New York, it was where you had a slew of indie hip hop labels. You had Enjoy,
Yep.
Sleeping Bag,
Yep.
Wild Pitch, Cold Chillin',
Mm-hmm.
Profile.
Yep.
Was Duck Down based out of New York, the label that Black Moon was on?
Yes, I believe. Well, weren't okay because, and I'm gonna have to ask Evil D and Mr. Walt. I believe they started out on Nervous Records. I believe they did.
hmm Okay.
But I don't know like the rest of the story and how that situation went. But I do believe they started out on Nervous Records.
Right. And, it was where a lot of these indie labels were pretty much making money off of, the rappers coming in and putting out a hot 12-inch. And it's where you could tour up and down your region. And then if you break somewhere else, that's all well and good. Because I remember reading and hearing on when EPMD first broke with You Got to Chill, how a lot of people thought that they were initially a West Coast act because they sampled Zap. And typically at that time, you didn't have a lot of East Coast acts sampling funk based samples. That was pretty
Yes,
much
you're correct.
A West Coast thing. So EPMD was rocking heavy out west when they first popped.
You are correct. You are absolutely correct.
Right, right, right. Now, I want to ask you this. Do you think, in the grand scheme of hip hop, when we talk about hip hop producers, that
Mm.
Larry Smith, does he, in your opinion, gets his just due, or do a lot of people still overlook him and the contributions that he laid for hip hop, for what he did for Curtis Blow, Houdini, Fat Boys, and was really one of the early hip hop super producers?
You want to know one of the sad? You want to know two sad things about this whole situation?
Mm,
The first sad thing is the '90s is so like the '90s is so popular. Like everyone always, when you talk about hip hop, you talk about the late '80s and the mid, like through the early '90s. So everybody always talks about that, right? But everyone fails to mention the '80s, and it never like. And I'm not talking like 85, 86. Everyone fails to mention them early '80s. Sad thing
mm,
about it is, now no disrespect to any of these guys I'm about to mention, everybody mentions people like Primo, Pete Rock, Marley Marl, Scott Storch, Dr. Dre. Um, those are just some of the, and nothing to take away from them. These guys have made some amazing work. Nothing to take away from them. But Larry Smith, in my opinion, is a person that very much so does not get his just due because a lot of people don't understand. Larry Smith produced, I think he produced Run DMC's first album, didn't he?
Yeah. Larry Smith worked with Run DMC as well, and
He
you know,
did
like
that. He did Houdini. So Larry Smith is someone who did not, has not, rest in peace, gotten his just due, and still to this day. Like I didn't know about Larry Smith until I was much older, and it's sad, in my opinion, that when people pass away is when they start to become more popular. And like I'm not saying that Larry Smith isn't more popular now, but it's sad that with him passing away, it took for his name to circulate a little more. Like same with Mr. Magic. Rest in peace to Mr. Magic. We lost Mr. Magic like 16 years ago. We didn't. A lot of people didn't know. Like a lot of people, like Mr. Magic's name didn't get brought up until really he passed away. Because for a while, Mr. Magic went MIA. But yeah, that's my take on Larry Smith.
yeah, and we got to give props to rest in peace Frankie Crocker for having the
Oh
foresight to put Mr. Magic on BLS because Mr. Magic was originally on WHBI, and also on WHBI was, I believe, DJ Jazzy J, and I think World Famous Supreme Team was also on HBI as well. And then Marley Marl and Mr. Magic, they made the transition over to BLS, and then we got the Mr. Magic's One by Houdini, which served as the de facto theme song for Mr. Magic's Rap Attack, and also big shout outs to Thomas Dolby. Yes, she's blinding me with
yes,
science. He was like really one of the first people to really mess with hip hop, and Jive was really one of those early labels on the major scale that really got it and really dug it because we saw the numbers that they did with Houdini. Then, of course, they went into overdrive once they signed Jazzy Jeff and Fresh Prince, and they also had KRS One on Jive as well.
you know the funny thing when you talk about Frankie Crocker, with Frankie Crocker, I heard in the beginning he was dead set against hip hop being on the radio. Um, but I believe it took Kiss FM having hip hop on and it making a bunch of noise for Frankie Crocker to say, let's put this Mr. Magic thing on and really, see where it goes. But here's the thing about that. At the time, Kiss FM was playing hip hop. Red Alert and Chuck Chillout weren't even on Kiss. This is like 81, 82, because Red Alert started in October of 83, from what Red told me. And then 8 months later, Chuck Chillout came in the game on Kiss. So it really took Frankie Crocker to have Kiss FM, play hip hop to say, you know what? I want this for my station because it's what the youth is really listening to, you know?
Yeah, because speaking from experience being in radio, once somebody's doing something well, you want to copy that. And then also at this time, radio was really hesitant to play hip hop during prime time because you only heard it when it was late at night or overnights because it would mess up the diaries at the time that would measure the ratings and how well the station did in the books. So that's why they would put it on at those late graveyard hours. And you also would hear liners back in the day that would say, no rap work day or no rap after five or something to that effect. And once rap became more commercial and programmers and music directors said, we got to take this genre seriously. And they started programming rap alongside your more established R&B acts at the time on urban radio.
And people looked at it as, that rebel music, that terrible, like banging, like rebel, like God forsaken, awful music back then.
Mm,
So
right.
that's
And
it was.
go ahead, go ahead.
No, no, no. I was saying that's how it was. Like people looked at it as like this music is terrible. Like what is this? Like this is BS. This is just nonsense. That's what it was.
And I want to touch on the point you mentioned earlier about the early 80s doesn't get talked about when we speak on hip hop's history because we tend to look at hip hop history from when Sugar Hill Gang put out Rappers Delight,
Yep.
skip 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, pick it back up around 85, 86, because this is right around the time when Fresh Fresh was happening and whatnot. But I want to talk about Curtis Blow and how Curtis Blow was the first rapper to get signed to a major label, signed with Mercury. He had a deal with Sprite. This is back in '86. Had a deal with Sprite and did a lot of firsts. And then also too, Curtis Blow was the one who brought Run from Run DMC into the game because Run used to DJ for Curtis Blow. It was called
Correct.
DJ Run, son of Curtis Blow.
Correct. Correct. And I think Davey D also DJ'd for Curtis Blow too, I think.
Okay. Yeah, so definitely put respect on Curtis Blow. But when you listen to a lot of those early rap records, they had the same polish as at the time disco records because if we listen to Rappers Delight, it was pretty much where the in-house band for Sugar Hill Records pretty much replayed Good Times and just said, "Hey, we're gonna replay this because this is what's popping." And Sylvia Robinson, rest in peace, had the foresight to get in on the ground floor and put together Sugar Hill Gang, and Rapper's Delight took off. And I don't know if you know this, you may or may not, but you know Master G from Sugar Hill Gang, right?
Hmm.
I believe his younger brother was Leo O'Brien, who played Richie in The Last Dragon.
Wow, wow, wow.
Yeah, yeah, I believe that
I
was
did
his
not
younger
know
brother.
that.
Yeah,
I
I
did
believe.
not know
Uh,
that.
yeah, I believe that was his younger brother. But you know, when you think about Rapper's Delight and how when that record dropped, it sent shockwaves through the music industry because nobody expected this little record to take off like it did. Because I'm sure at first glance and first listen, it was looked at more as like a novelty record. But once they saw that people were going to the stores requesting it, buying it, I mean, the record was so long, it was, I think, 18 minutes long initially, to where they had to
I
pare
have
it
the record.
down.
I have the record in here. I think on the 12 inch it's like 14 minutes. I have to like I don't I have so many records in this room right now, but I'd have to go through my collection and see exactly, you know,
But
what.
I know for sure it's over 10 minutes though.
Yeah, but that's what that like a few records you had that record that was like a long record. Then you had Rest in Peace Jimmy Spicer Super Rhymes. That was a long record too. You know.
And those long records were great for DJs because that kept people out on the dance floor. Now we were mentioning prior to this interview about Grandmaster Flash and how he came up with the quick mix theory all in his head, and it was trial and error to where everybody that's a DJ is following the path that he laid, where for him it was no manual, no instruction book. It was all
Nope.
just how to figure out how to manipulate time to be able to have the record play the parts that I want to play to keep the people dancing on the floor. Because I believe prior to that, you would have DJs that would have maybe two copies of the same record, and there was really no way before Grandmaster Flash, I believe, somebody can correct me on this if I'm wrong, that to extend the breakdown part on a record,
The break
the
beat. We
break
call it
beat,
the break beat.
the break beat, yeah, extend the break beat, on the record, and once that got figured out, it was game on.
Yes, and like I said, there's a lot of foundation. And another era that gets slept on too in hip hop is like the breakbeats era. I'm not saying everybody needs to like be a fan, but like if you're gonna study the culture of something, if you fall in love, not even just with hip hop, but if you fall in love with a culture or something, and fall in love with a movement, study what came before you.
Mm.
Study what came before you.
Yeah, and shout out to Breakbeat Lou because I heard a lot about those compilation albums and how folks had those at the ready, and along with the linoleum and everything else that you needed to go start a breakdance crew. because hip hop consisted of the elements which was graffiti, DJing, MCing, breaking. Those are considered the four elements of hip hop.
Yep. Hmm.
And I also want to talk about really fast that 1980, I want to say 84, 85, pivotal years in hip hop.
Agreed.
But 85, when actually prior to LL Cool J and Radio on Def Jam, I believe that was the first official album released on Def Jam, I want to say.
Hmm.
Because Def Jam had came out with because It's Yours Till I Rock. It was on Party
Party
Time,
Time Records. Yep. Party
Party
Time Records.
Time, and can I think it had like the famous burgundy color that became known to be on Def Jam labels. But when we talk about hip hop labels, we can't mention hip hop in its history without mentioning Def Jam and what Rick Rubin and Russell Simmons did for rap. And to think it all started back in the dorm room at NYU, I believe.
Yes. Yes. Shout to Rick Rubin. And Tila Rock, to clarify, was the first artist released on Def Jam, but I don't know if LL was the first album, but Tila Rock was the first artist to have a single, like the first ever artist released on Def Jam Records.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that is true. That is true what you're saying.
Right. Right. But when you think about that time period and how I mentioned Fresh Fest earlier, how
Mhm.
it was the first mega tour for hip hop because, once again, hip hop wasn't being taken seriously yet
Mm-hmm.
commercially. And
Mm-hmm.
also, too, what a lot of people don't know is you got to have insurance before you can book these venues. And if you
Yep.
don't get the insurance, it's no show. So I didn't know this until when Michael Bivins from New Edition was doing press for the New Edition story and said that, back in the day when a lot of rap acts were starting to break, a lot of them would hop on tour with New Edition. So that way it was the backdoor way to get rap in because, going on tour with an R&B act, you're going to easily be able to get their insurance and also kill two birds in one stone. You get your rap acts to open up and you got New Edition as your headliners, but also too, New Edition was one of the first R&B groups to really grow up and incorporate rap into their records. Also too, Force MDs as well. But New Edition, with them having their status around 84, 85, 86, 83 with Candy Girl. And when you think about it, in 83 when Candy Girl dropped, to hear a rap record on an R&B a rap section on an R&B record was totally unheard of. But I just thought that was a slick and clever way for for them to be able to have hip hop get introduced to a wider audience by having Fat Boys, Run DMC, and a lot Fat and UTFO and all the early rap acts hop on tour with them, introduce them to a wider audience, and also at the same time being able to say, "Hey, we are of hip hop, even though we are an R&B group."
Yes. 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 And shout out to what was I gonna say? Oh, shout out to Mr. Magic who actually discovered the Force MDs too.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people didn't know that. Mr. Magic discovered the Force MDs. I believe he was on the Staten Island ferry because that's where they're from. See, before Wu Tang Clan and everything, you had before Wu Tang Clan and the UMCs, you had Force MDs too.
Mm-hmm. Force MDs originally was the Force MCs with
Yes,
DJ Dr. Shock. Rest in
Dr. Rock,
peace.
DJ Dr. Rock.
Dr.
Oh,
Dr. I think it
was
was
Dr.
I want to say it was Dr. Shock, I believe, but don't quote me. But with Force MDs, how they were able to blend rap, R&B, and also they were signed to Tommy Boy, and a lot of their records, classics, Itching for a Scratch,
Mhm.
Tears, and of course the classic we all know and love to this day, Tender Love, which was written and produced by Jimmy Jam. Terry Lewis was Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis's first foray into top 10 spear for pop, which
Okay,
was
that I did
on,
not know. I did not
yeah,
know that.
yeah, that was Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis' first, I believe, top 10 pop hit off
I
of
did.
Crush Groove. Because I had heard that Tender Love was originally for New Edition. I don't know how true that is, but New Edition did make a cameo in Crush Groove during the Tin Pan Apple contest at the Disco Fever.
Okay. Okay. I ain't seen Crush Groove in years. I might, you know what? I might do that tonight. Watch Crush Groove. I haven't seen that movie in a long time.
Yeah, for those that don't know, Crush Groove is pretty much loosely based on, Russell Simmons and Def Jam, and Rick Rubin plays himself. And Crush Groove was the introductory movie role for a young actor who would later become a success on the hit TV show LA Law, Blair Underwood.
Mmm. Okay.
Yeah, that
Okay.
was his first acting role. And also too, if you look real closely in Crush Groove and one of the scenes, Chris Rock is actually an extra.
Wow. 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 Crazy.
It's blinking you miss it.
Wow. Crazy.
Yeah, it's blinking you miss it. And then of course you got LL Cool J in there, and a lot of
Yep.
the other people who were affiliated with, Def Jam at the time, and Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, rest in peace, Andre Harrell,
Yep.
and how it's crazy to think with Def Jam, especially with LL Cool J, how he started out as a teenager when he put out Radio in '85, and to see where he is now, expanding his portfolio in films, TV, being an entrepreneur, and then putting out the Force album last year. It's actually a great time when you see a lot of the seasoned vets in the game still putting out music
Mm-hmm.
and saying that we're not going to rest on our laurels. We still got good content, and we want to prove that we can still get busy on the mic.
Yes. 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 Amen. It goes to show you that hip hop can come from the street and can turn into anything. You know?
And it's also a good thing too when you're seeing a lot of the elder statesmen expanding their portfolios. Bun B with Trill Burgers. We mentioned LL, Queen Latifah, Will Smith.
Yep.
We can go on and on of everybody that's expanding their portfolio, but hip hop was the entry into the game, and to see them where they just constantly flip, flip, and flip. It's
Mm-hmm.
a beautiful thing, because I had the privilege 2 years ago to go see the 50th Hip Hop The Force tour. They made an
Okay.
Albuquerque stop. It was LL, the Roots were the backing band, DJ Jazzy Jeff, and
Okay.
also on this tour stop you had Bone Thugs as
Mm.
special guests. You had Big Boy. He brought out Sleepy Brown with him.
Mm.
Also, you had the Awe, Mr. Rakim,
The
who was
God.
on
The
there.
God.
The God MC, yes sir. And it was, I had summed it up after going to that show where it felt like you were watching an episode of Video Music Box, Rap City, Yo and TV Raps, Rap City the Basement, all in one, because the lineup varied based on what stop you were at, because they'll have some surprise guests pop up and
Right.
whatnot. But to be able to see all of that on one stage, for me, it was a lifelong dream come true to see all that together. Being a fan of hip hop and just seeing the culture be represented, and how, you know, who would have thought that hip hop would be 50 plus years old, and it's the world's most respected and viable form of music. You can go to any country in the world. You don't know a lick of English, but you can recite a rap record.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's true. That is very true and very deep what you said. Very true.
Now, the one puzzling thing about the hip hop 50th. Yeah, all these great artists performing and everything, but there was for me one act that was missing, and he gets talked about, but a lot of people overlook. It's because of what he did. That's why rap is pop. MC
Mm.
Hammer.
Yeah, yeah. And you're right. You're right. Wow. You're absolutely right on that. That's real.
MC Hammer, and
Real.
I'm gonna tell you, bro. You know, I was there when the man was cooking. You know, when Please Hammer Don't Hurt Him dropped in 1990, I was 4 going on 5. That album went diamond. For those that
Yeah.
don't know, diamond is 10 million sold. I mean, this man had endorsements for KFC, British Knights, Pepsi, had his own Saturday morning cartoon, and had you all wearing the baggy pants and doing the "you can't touch this" at your school dance. You know you did. But also too, let it be known, Hammer was not the one to play with
No,
on
he no,
stage
I no,
or off.
I heard some story. I heard some stories. We're gonna leave that alone. We're gonna leave that alone.
Yeah, yeah. Look up some of them stories on YouTube. Some folks they'll let you know Hammer don't play.
Yes, I've heard some stories.
Yeah, he don't play about that. So definitely like Andre 3000 said, play on Hammer if you want to. See what happens. Yeah, you
Hmm.
don't want any of them problems. But speaking of Hammer, you know, there's been a great tradition of rappers out of the Bay Area, such as Hammer, E40, Too Short. We got Souls of Mischief. We got the whole hyphy movement. Rest in peace, Mac Dre.
Yep.
And the Bay Area was all about go getting it, go do it yourself, because how Hammer got his deal with Capitol was he was pushing it out of the trunk, the Power album, and once Capitol saw the numbers he was pushing independent, that's when they came knocking,
Yep.
and it paid dividends. And then I didn't know this until I saw the No Limit Chronicles, but No Limit Records was based out of Richmond, California. P had went out to Richmond, California for a little bit, got his bearings under him, had a record store, put out West Coast compilations on there, and then ended up moving the operations back to the 504. And then we all know what happened after that once Master P came back to New Orleans
Hmm.
in that movement. So we're gonna swing back to stay around 85, 86. At this time, yeah, hip hop booming, but R&B was kind of in a little bit of a flux because you still had, you know, the traditional sounds of R&B that was done by production teams in the late 70s, early 80s, and it still felt smooth. But I feel Full Force laid the groundwork for what was later to come with New Jack Swing and Teddy Riley. Because if you listen to their stuff, along with the work they did with UTFO, Lisa and the Cult Jam, Cheryl Pepsi Riley, and Whistle, and then just how it just had that hard edge to it, and how it kind of let people know that R&B was set to go in a different direction once Full Force put out their own stuff.
Mm. Yes, yes, that is true. Yes, it is. It is true. That is definitely true.
mm, Full Force, and then of course they ended up reinventing themselves quite nicely by writing for pop acts, some little acts you might know of, like Britney Spears, Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, Rihanna. Also did some early work for Nicki Minaj, and you know Full Force put some respect on their name, because if not, if you seen House Party 1, they're gonna kick your freaking you know what.
Hmm. Hmm. A lot of people don't give like. There's a lot of groups from the past that don't get their respect due, in my opinion. You know,
Hmm.
that's just me speaking.
Hmm. And that, you know, with I want to say Full Force, And also at this same time as well, there was also when Teddy Riley started to emerge,
Yes.
where around 85, 86, he did Classical 2, Rap's New Generation, Kumo
Wow.
D, Go See
You.
the Doctor.
Hmm.
Now, Classical 2 is not a record not a lot of people outside the tri-state area knows about.
That's a that I'm a so I didn't I should have piggybacked on this earlier when we started. I'm 28. I've been DJing for 18 years, and I I say this to say, yo, be like he's young. How does he know this stuff? You know. Let me tell you something about classical too. Shout out to the world's famous Brucey B, DJ Brucey B. Um, he used to own a club in New York. It was like I think it was in Harlem called the Rooftop,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a rooftop classic. Brucey B used to cut the beginning, the dub, the dum 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 dum. He used to cut that up. Shouts to Brucey B, and also going back to what you said, in the rooftop there was a recording studio at the top of the on the upstairs of the rooftop. There was a recording studio. Shouts to Gusto, who was working at the rooftop. But you had Rap's New Generation that was produced in that studio. Go See the Doctor was produced in the Rooftops recording studio, and also you forgot Heavy D, Mr. Big Stuff, his
Rest in
first record.
peace.
Yes, yes, yes. So when you talk about classical too, I just wanted to throw that out there that was Rooftop, and also if you're in Harlem, Willie Burgers was doing their thing too. That was like a hip hop movement, like Willie Burgers. You get a
Mm-hmm.
burger, and then you go to the Rooftop too, and then also there was S&S Club.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if you've seen the movie Paid in Full, it's based in that whole era with Rich, Alpo, all of
Yep,
them hanging out at Willie Burgers, going to the rooftop, the skating rink.
yep.
That whole
Mm,
era where you would just pose out front, flex with your nice ride, probably had your Dapper Dan on, and had some of that hip hop R&B stuff bumping out of your 88 Maxima.
yep. And then it was Brucey. I'm gonna tell you, it was the DJs that was really making noise up there. It was Brucey B, Ron G, Kid Capri. Uh, uh, yeah, go on. I think, yeah, you got like Star Child. Rest in peace, Star Child too. DJ Star Child. Rest in peace to him. He used to go and handle that rooftop real nice. Or was it rooftop? I forgot what club Star Child handled. Listen, I'm my brain. I There's so much information to process, but shouts to Brucey B and everybody.
Mm-hmm. And we forgot to mention the show. How can we forget
Yeah,
to
yeah,
mention
yeah. I
the
was, I was
show?
gonna mention that because Teddy
Classic
Riley
Dougie
produced.
Fresh, Slick Rick.
Yes, you are correct. Teddy Riley did produce the show by Dougie Fresh. He definitely did. He definitely did.
Hmm. Now, Teddy Riley, pre Guy, he was in a group called Kids at Work with future Guy member Timmy Gatlin and the
Hmm.
another gentleman whose name I can't recall. But they kind of had that early new edition sound to it, and it would put out on Sony Records, Sounds of New York Records. And I believe that was the same record label that In Deep, Last Night the DJ Saved My Life was on. And then when Kids at Work didn't pan out, that was when Teddy went back to perform on the New York music scene in a band called Total Climax. And then Keith Sweat was performing in another band in that same circuit. And they would always cross paths with each other. And when Keith Sweat was getting ready to make a solo record, he saw Teddy and he asked Teddy, "Hey, I want you to do some records for me." And
Right.
Teddy was like, "Nah, I just do hip hop." And then I guess things changed, and as we know, we got the classic "Make It Last Forever" album based on that
Yep.
collaboration.
And I wanna. Like I said, there's so many records in this room. I can't even keep count. I know like my video isn't showing the vinyl, but there's so much vinyl in this room. I know that I have I Want Her in here. I think I have like 3 copies of that in here.
I mean, that record was a game changer. It crossed over pop,
It was.
R&B, and then of course the Make It Last Forever album. I mean, Keith Sweat milked that album from 87 to 90 when I'll Get All of My Love to You came out. But when you think about New Jack Swing, Make It Last Forever, I'll Be Sure in Effect Mode, Guy's debut album,
Mm-hmm.
Bobby Brown, Don't Be Cruel. I would
Mm-hmm.
say those are your top four, at least for me, that laid the foundation for New Jack Swing. And then I will also put an honorable mention for New Edition's Heartbreak album.
Yes, yes, I would agree. I would definitely have to agree with that. That is a very accurate list, my man.
Mm, Now, a lot of people would say this too. I've heard this recently in conversation. I want to know if you agree. A lot of people think that Janet's Control album was kind of like in the early space of what was to later come with New Jack, because if you listen to Control, Nasty, you kind of hear that grittiness, that bite, that attitude, the same attitude of hip hop on those albums. And not to say that Janet's first 2 albums, the debut album and the Dream Street albums, weren't good albums, great material by Renee and Angela and Leon Silver's third, who doesn't get enough credit for all that he's done for the industry, and also Solar Records, who which I feel does not get enough contributions and mentioned enough for what they brought to the industry. And just how once Janet got with Jam and Lewis, it was where they found the sweet spot to find records that's tailored to her, and we're gonna accentuate her strengths. And as we saw, we got a good run from Control, Rhythm
Yep.
Nation, Janet album, Velvet Rope. And I kind of think music benefits more when you're able to have that collaboration period with one person working on an album, because that's why the Nas and Hit Boy run was so good.
Mm-hmm. I would say that Janet Jackson, to answer your question, Janet Jackson's record is in control. I'm sorry, I'm thinking Control is definitely part of the New Jack Swing era. I never, you know how like when people ask questions, you don't really take time to think about it or really think it through. But
Mm-hmm.
if you really think about it, I would say you're right. I would agree. I would agree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that record came out in '86,
Yeah, I was
and it was
86.
right around that same time period where, like I said, New Jack Swing was bubbling, '86, '87. And to me, the sound really exploded once you hit '88, '89.
I would agree that yeah that like because you had Guy Groove Me, um, what was it? Girl, I got my eyes on
Today.
today, and you had a bunch of people just making records from Teddy Riley. Yeah, 88, 89. Definitely agree. Definitely agree.
And the cool thing about, I had mentioned the Heartbreak album earlier, that when you go back and listen to New Edition's earlier albums and then put on Heartbreak after listening to those early records, you could hear the growth, the progression, and then once Johnny came into the group, what they were looking to do maybe 3 years prior for All for Love, but necessarily didn't have the tools in the toolbox to do so.
Right.
Once
Right.
again, Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis just building that profile to say, hey, how can we accentuate the strengths of this already established brand, but incorporate this voice in Johnny Gill to bring home the point that these guys are no longer boys, but are men,
They're men.
and no pun intended, turning from boys to men. And that album, Game Changer, and then of course, Don't Be Cruel, launched Bobby Brown into the stratosphere. But
Solo.
but I would say though, King of Stage kind of set the precedent for that. Although The album to me felt a little bit uneven because they were still trying to market Bobby as Bobby Brown from New Edition and not really give that harder edge that later came on Cruel. But you kind of heard the direction he wanted to go to on the title track on King of Stage, and it was a precursor to what you would hear on Cruel. And doing the cutting and scratching on the King of Stage record was Mixed Master Ice from UTFO.
Yep, yep. And shouts to one of my friends, my homeboy, Sel Boogie out of Brooklyn. He knows Mixmaster Ice, so he's talked about Mixmaster Ice. So I've been hearing his name a lot lately. I just want to say shout out to Mixmaster Ice and shout out to Sel Boogie on that.
Right. And speaking of UTFO, I think their contributions don't get talked about enough either. Rest in peace, Kango
Kango
Kid
Kid.
and the Educated Rapper.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That is true.
Yeah, because with Roxanne, that record came out and it sparked the Roxanne Wars and of course Roxanne Shantae's introduction to the world and the real Roxanne and everything that came on after that. But I want to swing over to Rap Crews. We briefly touched on Juice Crew earlier, but let's
Mm.
just talk about Juice Crew's impact as a collective and what they brought to the table.
Man, Juice Crew. Juice Crew was something special because you had a bunch of heavy hitters in that group. I mean, where do we begin? You had Roxanne Shante, who was a beast, and she was knocking dudes out at the New Music Seminar when she was like 14, 15. But because she was a girl, they wanted what was it, Busy Bee to win that joint.
Mm,
So you had Roxanne Shante, who was killing it. You had Big Daddy Kane, who was very, very, very hard on that mic. You had Shan, Cool G Rap was just, I mean, my two favorite is Kane and G Rap in the Juice Crew. You know what I'm saying? Because though they're different, but their styles are different, but they both are like, but the G Rap is just, but man, Biz, rest in peace, Biz, definitely. And
mm,
a lot of people didn't realize going back to Kane and his gifted abilities. Kane wrote a lot of the songs for G Rap. No, not G Rap. Biz and I think he wrote a couple songs for Biz and someone else I think too. But Kane wrote "Nobody Beats the Biz," and that, if you know me, anyone that really knows me as far as me DJing, Nobody Beats the Biz is one of my staples. Like every DJ has a staple in their crate, and Nobody Beats the Biz is a record I can cut to death. So
mm-hmm.
Kane really was very instrumental, I believe, in that Business Going Off album. I believe.
Mm-hmm. Kane, my top five MCs. Nobody beat the Biz. Great record. Rest in peace, TJ Swan.
Yes.
And how, with Nobody Beats the Biz, I believe because the chorus was similar to a chorus. Nobody beats the Wiz. Nobody beats the Wiz.
And the
I
Wiz was like
think
a big store. That was a
the
big store in New
Wiz.
York
I
City.
think the Wiz pretty much did a lawsuit or something to that
Yeah, yeah,
effect.
yeah. Marley said it one time. Marley said that the Wiz came at them for that.
Mm,
You're
yeah,
correct.
right. And then we mentioned TJ Swan just a minute or so ago. I know after TJ Swan passed, Marley Marl had went on the radio and played some unreleased work from TJ Swan, and I was like, "Yo, dope material." And then he stated that I think TJ Swan had an opportunity to get a record deal with Arista, but chose to forego it to, be behind the scenes and be a family man and do all of that. But just hearing the early TJ Swan material, especially, knowing it was right around that same time period when Al B was cooking, I was like, yo, that could have worked.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was
Mm.
already singing on all the hooks for
Yeah,
Cold Chillin', just like how Al B Sure was doing on a lot of the Uptown stuff.
yeah, yeah. That's true. That's true. That is true.
Now, Uptown, rest in peace, Andre Harrell. they were able to merge hip hop, R&B. We mentioned Heavy D. Now on the Living Large album, Marley Marl had a couple of production cuts on the
Yes,
Living Large album.
yes, yes. You're correct.
He was in the Uptown's Kicking It video.
Uptown, Uptown. Now that's a record that's very slept on. That Uptown, kicking it, very slept on. That record.
Yeah, with Finesse and Sequence, Groove Be
Yep.
Chill, and a lot of Uptown roster at that time, Heavy D and the Boys, and how Andre Harrell took what he learned at Rush Management under Russell Simmons, went out, struck on his own with Uptown, and we saw what they brought to the game with mentioned Heavy D and the Boys, Guy, I'll Be Sure, The
Yep.
Girls,
Yeah.
Jodeci,
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Mary J, Soul for Real, Monifa,
A lot of
and
things was happening at Uptown. A lot of things was happening at Uptown.
and then I'm sure a lot of people know that originally Biggie was signed to Uptown.
Yes. And Diddy, Diddy was instrumental as well in with Uptown as well at a
hmm
certain point.
Very instrumental. I mean, despite what we know now with Diddy, it doesn't erase what he did musically because two things can exist at the same time, but we know that it won't be able to go back to where it was prior to everything that's came out, especially since the verdict dropped. And for you as a DJ, does that make you dim the light on the legacy of Bad Boy because of the actions that came out and the aftermath of that?
Well, it's like we said on the phone last night before we decided to do this today. Um, the thing with Diddy is it's not fair. If I'm gonna stop playing the records that Diddy produced, it's not necessarily fair because some of those records he didn't rap in them. It was the artist. So the artist didn't do anything. It's Diddy. Now, maybe the solo records that Diddy did, I'll stop rocking them. But as far as like the Faith Evans and the Carl Thomases and the Biggies and the Total and Mace and everything, that's not fair to them. So why would I stop playing those? Like I said, now as far as Diddy as a solo artist, maybe that might be a different story. But
Mhm.
you know,
Right. Now, who was the person, back to you, who's the person that started you out to say, hey, if you want to DJ, I'll go and help you get started, go crate digging with you, show you the tricks of the trade, or was it more where you kind of learned trial and error on the fly?
I mean, I'm gonna tell you this. Um, Everything I've done as far as DJing is self-taught. Like I said, for those that don't know, I'm blind. Um, None of my records are labeled. Like nothing is brailled in here. Everything is just like every vinyl has a different label, and I can tell just by feeling the top of the label. Oh, that's Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. Oh, that's Kraftwerk. Oh, that's. But as far as I mean, like my dad was like, look, if you get good grades in school, then I'll get you your set. And then my mom got me my first pair of turntables, and my father got me my first pair of CDJs. But as far as me learning the tricks of the trait, I had to listen to tapes of Red Alert and everything and figure out, oh, you're putting the two records on two different turntables versus two records on one turntable and mixing it. Oh, you're using the fader in the middle to transform with the mixer and everything. So everything I've done is self taught, which I guess in one sense can be a blessing and a curse in another sense.
Mhm. Now, with the art of DJing, you got your different DJs. You got your blender, you got your mixer, and you got your talker. Which one of the three would you say you are, or are you a hybrid of the three?
I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I'm more so a hybrid of the two, of just the blending and the mixing. But instead of the talking, I like scratch. Cause I'm gonna be honest. What good is a mix? And no disrespect. Let me say this right here, because I don't want to hurt. I don't want to offend anybody. But no disrespect to the DJs that like to talk. But what good is a mix if all you're gonna do is talk, 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 talk? Like you're pretty much taking away from what we as the listener. Because not only am I a DJ, I'm a fan. If I'm going to a party, I'm gonna listen to what you're doing, not to know what not to do. But if I'm coming to party, I want to hear some damn good music. Excuse me, and I want to hear some damn good skills. So having said that, um, you know, what good is talking if all you're gonna what good is the mix if all you're gonna do is talk, 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 talk? Now, some DJs can pull that off, but I guess you could say I'm a hybrid of a blender and a mixer, but instead of talking, scratching to
Mhm.
to,
Yeah, because back in those mixtape days of the late 80s, early mid 90s, it was talk heavy.
yeah, 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 like Kid Capri, Brucey B, Ron G, Craig G, SNS, Debo the Pro, Green Lantern, all them dudes. Like everybody had something to say on that mic. And shouts to my friend DJ Deca who said for for DJs, your microphone is your most important tool if you know how to use it right. Now, I talk, but I don't like talking in the middle of throwing the other record in. Because let my hands do the talking and let the music speak for itself. That's just
Mhm.
my opinion.
Yeah, to teach his own because you got to know when to talk on the record, when to mix, and when not to. And it's a science that can only be taught, by trial and error. Because I'm sure a lot of DJs who came up old school, they locked themselves away in the bedroom until they got it right. Had a couple of parties where they didn't necessarily rock, but got better and better and better the more reps you get. Because, like they say, you put in your 10,000 hours, you're going to get good at it sooner or later.
Right. Right, right, right. Mm-hmm. That's true.
And I want to know what was your first take when you heard the productions coming from the West Coast, Dr. Dre especially.
I mean, me being a kid of the me being a kid growing up here in the West. I mean, well, me being a kid growing up here in the East Coast sounds. It was something to get used to because I just wasn't used to like when I hear synthesizers, I'm used to the R&B side of things. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But it took a minute, but I got used to it eventually. So, hearing stuff like Dr. Dre and DJ Quick and um, like Ice Cube and NWA, it took a minute, but I learned to because you got if you're gonna study, like I said before, if you're gonna study a culture that you love, you got to learn to embrace everything. You know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the West Coast sound was something totally different. And there
it
was a
was.
documentary that came out a couple of years ago about the G Funk sound. And I believe Ice T was explaining how in New York, because everything being so fast paced, the beats are very fast because everybody's go, 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 go. But out
Yes.
west, it's more slow, laid back, and chill because of the nature of how life is out on the West Coast. So the sound has to fit the lifestyle of the area where you're from.
Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm. That's true.
Right,
That is true. That is
right,
true.
right. And the crazy thing about the Chronic and Doggy Style, those were West Coast sounding records that went pop. Same thing
Yes.
with Warren G, Regulate, and how even though he was a West Coast artist, he was signed to Def Jam.
And it got love out here.
Hmm. Which was surprising because it was still, you know, for West Coast acts, even though they were getting played on the radio, it still was looked at from if it ain't New York, it ain't hip hop.
Right. Right. Yes, that is true. That is true. That is very true.
Yeah,
Very
so
true.
so if they were doing that with West Coast Records, I can only imagine what New Yorkers, especially New York radio around 94, 95, was feeling when Outkast came out. Because, of course, being from the South and hearing that, I understand it because being from the South is it's a totally different style, vibe, sound. But when you play that for a certain region that's not used to the aesthetic and the culture that the South brings, it's looked at as gibberish because everybody still at that time, I believe, looked at the South as, oh, you just listening to Uncle Luke and booty music come out of Miami, or what was coming out of Houston and Rap a Lot with Ghetto Boys, and out of
Mhm.
Memphis with 3 6, DJ Spanish Fly, all of that. It was where you were still very segregated in terms of only sticking to what your region was. Because remember, this was pre-internet, so we didn't have no way to know the outside of maybe trading tapes and whatnot from somebody from another part of the country. But you
Right.
pretty much only heard what was in your locale. But once people got to hear what was coming out west, what was coming out of the Midwest, what was coming out of certain pockets in the South, to where it's like, hip hop is more than just what's based out of New York. It's different. And to me, that expansion gave hip hop more legs to spread and grow.
Yeah. Yes. I agree. 150%.
And with the South, mentioning Atlanta, LaFace, but also
Mm-hmm.
too, I think nobody really talks about this enough as well. I think, in my opinion, Chris Cross and ABC, Another Bad Creation, launched to me the whole movement with what was to later come with all the rap acts that came out of Atlanta. Because you think about what ABC and Chris Cross was doing.
Yes.
ABC was pop, Chris Cross, gangbusters,
Yes.
jump, crossover, totally crossed out, high successful album. I mean, they were opening for Michael Jackson in the
Mm-hmm.
Jam video. I mean, Chris Cross was doing numbers. And I'm glad now people are recognizing what it should have been anyway. But it feels
Yes.
like more so now, JD, Jermaine Dupri, is really getting his flowers for what he's brought to the industry, not only as a producer, but as a songwriter as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That is true. Shout out to Jermaine Dupri. Shout out to LaFace. Shout out to wasn't TLC down part of that movement too?
Yeah,
Not like Chris.
TLC was signed to LaFace.
Yes.
Yeah,
So shout out.
they were signed to LaFace because how it was where if you look at the video for the R&B artist Pebbles Backyard, T-Boz and Left Eye are in the video.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, because Chili, she was originally a dancer for R.I.P. Damian Dane, that was signed to LaFace. She was a dancer for them. And it was originally another girl in the group along with T-Boz and Left Eye, but the other girl got dropped, and then that's how Chili came into the group, and that's how we got TLC. Rest in
Yep.
peace.
Yes, yes. So that was a huge movement. Huge movement.
Huge movement, and just that whole Atlanta period. Where the one thing I like about Atlanta is that once everybody popped, it was more so where like we're gonna help each other because we're better in together, strength in numbers, as opposed to everybody's doing their own thing. So to see where the movement is now, where everybody is out doing their thing, and you're seeing the various rappers having different investments in their portfolio brands, and to where nobody's looking at the South as backwards Hicks anymore. You're looked at as a serious player in
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
music industry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, right. And
Yeah.
then I'm also glad too that Bow Wow is getting his flowers now.
Yeah, yeah, yes, yes. Shout out to him as well.
Yeah, Bow Wow's getting his flowers because when Bow Wow was really popping, I mean, Beware of Dog, Doggy Bag, Unleashed era Bow Wow, he was a whole problem. They didn't call him Mr. 106 in part for nothing.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're right. You're right.
Yeah,
That is true.
he was Mr. 106 in Park, and his hits range from early 2000s to where now he's still out and about doing his thing touring. And then it was also announced too, maybe last week or so, that next year, boom, 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 Bone Thugs and Harmony will be getting a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
That's dope. That's dope. That's dope. That's dope.
And once again,
That's
with the West Coast connection, they were discovered by Eazy-E.
okay. Rest in peace to him. Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, Eazy-E. Because with Bone Thugs being from Cleveland, I think they told a story of where I think they took a Greyhound back in the day out to L.A. This was back when you had to go chop your demo around, had their demo, and was going around getting signed. And somehow it found way to Eazy-E. And then we all know what happened with Bone Thugs after that, because that was like one of the last acts that he helped mentor and really navigate into the business before he passed away. So once again, rest in peace, Eazy-E.
Yeah, rest in
But
peace.
to think about NWA and just everything that came out of that movement. I mean, Dre, Ice Cube, uh, MC Ren,
Mm-hmm.
DJ Yella, and Arabian Prince, who's also a part of NWA, and Easy, and you know, coming from Dre's branch was Snoop. To come from Snoop and was 50, of course, discovered by Dre, and then from Dre's branch as well, Eminem, and then we can also put
Yep.
Kendrick Lamar in that branch as well.
Yeah, Dre got hit. Dre got a legacy. A legacy. Crazy.
Yeah, a legacy, and he ain't got to put out detox because he's chilling off of Beats by Dre money.
Yeah, no, he's good. No, Dre's good. Trust me, Dre's good.
Yeah, and it's amazing to see now how Snoop is America's sweetheart. To where back in 93, 94, you mean to tell me this guy would be doing shows with Martha Stewart and being beloved by Middle America?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Which is crazy to say. Now, for you as a DJ, um where do you see the art of DJing going? Because of technology, do you think that you have a lot of DJs coming in that's not wanting to know the ways of the old, of coming in and where you pretty much got your shortcuts to where you necessarily don't have to figure out, oh, I got the wrong BPM here, so I'm gonna put this cheat in. It's gonna tell me the BPM. It's gonna make sure that I'm straight to where I necessarily don't have to figure it out on my own, where I don't have to, like back in the old days, used to crash and burn a couple of sets before I got really good.
I mean, honestly, I'm gonna tell you this, man.
Keep it a
Being a
buck.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it a buck. Being a DJ had like the technology is a blessing and a curse because you have a lot of DJs. The blessing is the technology. It makes it easy because you don't have to lug around crates. You don't have to carry heavy speakers, heavy wiring. You have everything in a, like because when I DJ at the radio station in Raleigh, I carry my flash drive in my pocket, so I don't have to worry about carrying that or a CD booklet, right?
Mm.
And that's the blessing. And the speakers and everything is set up. Now the curse is with this technology, you have a bunch of DJs who really do not deserve the title of being a DJ. Um, where do I see the where do I see it going? Like, and how long? Like, are we talking 5 years, 10 years? Like, how long are we talking about? Like,
Where is it going for the next 5? Let's say, for topic's sake.
um, Probably probably within the next 5 or so years, I could probably just see it being, and I said this before, it could be a thing where it's like a robot, and the robot, you just press it and it just programs the song for you. I mean, I'm gonna be funky with you right now. I'm gonna keep it $3. This AI business that's going on is taking a lot of our jobs and our careers. Not even just as DJs, but just in general. But being that AI is taking over with a lot of DJs, we got to figure a way to combat this AI because look, AI isn't going anywhere, and I'm slowly trying to get adjusted. I have to get used to like I got to learn to I got to use Chat GBT. I'm trying to learn how to do that, and it's a thing where people have told me, "Hey, Mash, the Chat GPT thing is getting to be good." But I say all that to say, with AI taking over, who knows what the DJ field is going to be like? It's scary, but I mean, think about it like we said yesterday. I know a few veteran DJs, legend. I knew a few legends who told me, and even in videos, like I know these dudes personally, they were not with the whole Serato thing in the beginning. But can you blame them because you're so used to carrying vinyl, but then at the same time your back is hurting? Do you want to carry all that with you? So
Mm-hmm.
that it's tough, man. You figuring out like what it's real tough. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah,
tough.
yeah, because with technology, it's either adapt or perish.
Yes, yes.
That
So
that's it. And then, like you mentioned back in the day, that's how a lot of DJs got into the game where they would get on with somebody, carry the crates, and that was kind of like your rite of passage to get in, to get put on.
yeah, and not only that, like with me, like I started in 2007, right? So that's 18 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, I was in a bit of a transitional period, more so with. I mean, I don't know, like, and maybe other DJs can co-sign this, and maybe even you can too, with you being in radio. 2007 was a time when when the vinyl was just, as far as DJs are concerned, vinyl was pretty much over. Like it was dead. Doing vinyl, it was
Mm-hmm.
dead. But 2007 was that time when you were transitioning from CDs to Serato. But I was, because for those of you that don't know, although shout out to DJ Touchtone, if you know who he is, he uses Serato, but a lot of the time Serato is not compatible with the computer. Like the computer I'm tapping on right now, there's a voiceover features on here, but Serato does not work with the voiceover. Now, that's not to say that blind, because I know a few blind people besides DJ Touchtone that uses Serato, and I believe how it works is um, you can set up your crates a certain way, and you can go to it and just bang 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 like access your songs. I don't know, but um, I was in a transitional period to where it was CDs and Serato, but luckily I was able to do vinyl and CDs. Now when I DJ, I use the USB sticks, and I still have the CDJ units, which is what I'm sitting in front of right now. And how it works is I can just plug the USB sticks into the CDJ and bam, 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 plug in the joint and just get to my songs. Now, when I'm DJing at the radio station, Oak 93.5 in Raleigh, I have a controller that is flash drive supported.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the blessing with all that.
Yeah, because like you mentioned, '07, early 2000s, it was a funky time because it was that last little bit of analog and the early wave of digital coming in because I was on DigiWax, and when I would get my promos, it would be straight vinyl. I did have a few labels used to send me a couple of promo 12 inches, but right around during that time period, it was pretty much all digital, where you were getting digital songs on files, and like you said, now with AI coming and how you have AI bands coming out, and it's gonna get really murky with people, having ideas for songs and whatnot, and maybe somebody that's doing an AI band or AI artist jack your idea. I mean, it's about to be the Wild Wild West, bro.
Yeah, it's about to get hectic, man. It's really about to get hectic.
Yeah, because we're already kind of seeing now with streaming how hectic that is because a lot of the older artists are saying, hey, how you gonna have me split a fraction of a penny? But
Right.
when you look at these older contracts, they didn't factor in new technologies that'll be coming in and knowing that, hey, we got streaming to where folks are not going to go to a record store. I mean, there's generations of kids that don't even know Sam Goody, Turtles, Blockbuster
Yeah.
Music, Camelot, or any mom and pop record store. I mean,
There's
they're
kids
so
that don't even know what coconuts is. That's where I used to get my blank tapes. There's kids
that's
that don't even know what Kmart is. That's where I used to get my cassettes.
rest in
Kmart,
peace.
yes. Kmart, coconuts, and I used to also get my tapes from Best Buy and Target. So there's a lot. I mean, kids know what Best Buy and Target is, but a lot of kids don't even know what a cassette is. You know?
Actually, I saw not an article, saw a video on CBS Sunday morning a couple of months ago where a lot of the younger generation they are experiencing a renewed interest in cassette tapes.
Mm. Now, I bet you they don't know what it's like to tape a song on the radio.
It's pretty much where one girl who they interviewed, she inherited her dad's tape collection, and she has like the old school big Walkman, and I'm like, it's cool to see, kids wanting to experience something that they never had, but being from that era, I'm like, it's a good thing that we do have streaming, but you miss the fact of having the physical touch of an
Yes.
actual tape, actual CD,
Or
going down
vinyl.
to the record store, spending your hard-earned 12 or 20, depending on how much your store charged you for a tape or CD, ripping that plastic off, reading the liner notes, the album credits, and then just having that community with fellow music listeners and saying, "Hey, what did you think about this album?" And also, too, it forced you to be a better music listener because you had to sit through the whole thing unless you wanted to fast forward through a song and end up risking losing the sound quality of the tape. And CD, you kind of could get away with that a little bit more, but tape and vinyl for sure, you had to actually sit and listen to a whole record. Even
I'm gonna
though,
tell you right now,
go
a
ahead.
lot of my tapes, the quality on some of them joints are not good because I be like, if there's like certain parts of mixes, and I didn't mean to cut you off,
Now
but
go ahead.
certain mixes, the quality in them cassettes, man, like not even just me, like in general, like there's certain parts of the tapes I like hearing and I rewind it over and over again. So I'm gonna tell you right now, some of the qualities in my cassettes are probably just like not damaged, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, the sound is kind of warped, which kind of reminds me, folks, I need to do this myself because I still got two shoe boxes worth of Time Machine tapes back in NC. But convert all your physical material to digital
Mm-hmm.
because if it sits, you lose it. I mean, you got definitely if you got tapes, if you got vinyls, if you got reel to reel, if you got carts, all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff is sitting and it's constantly losing the quality of the sound. So if you got physical media still around, get those converted. Same thing goes for VHS tapes, Betamax tapes. And then one last thing before we get up out of here, we definitely gonna do a part two to this, but last thing I want to get you out on. What current projects you got working on? Where can people hear your mixes and whatnot? Let the people know where they can hear you.
I mean, as far as current projects go, I've been, not really as many in the way of current projects, unless it's like I'm just making mixes and I can just churn out mixes on a daily if I wanted to. But it's honestly like a mental thing. But honestly, um, just stay tuned for mixes, man. That's all I can say. As far as where you can hear my mixes, I'm on the radio in Raleigh. I'm on Oak 93.5, which is a low power frequency station. I'm on every Friday night from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that is the Friday Night House Party. And the Friday Night House Party consists of records that, you know, I mean, lately it's been like 90s and 2000s and 2010s because I'm trying to cater to the younger crowd. But every now and then I might spark an urge to want to play like the classics and like stuff that, y'all might like from the 80s and whatnot. But I'm on that station. And then I'm also on Beat Miners Radio. If you know of Evil D and Mr. Walt, home of, the Beat Miners, they produce stuff like Black Moon, Smith and Wesson. I'm on their station. I'll actually be on there tomorrow, each and every Thursday from 2 to 4 p.m. And that is the Mix Mash Experience. And sometimes, haven't been on there in a while, but sometimes you can catch me on WQFS in Greensboro at 90.9 doing special guest sets. But that is really where you can catch me to hear all that jazz. So Oak 93.5, Friday nights, 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Beat Miners Radio each and every Thursday from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with the Mix Mash Experience. And Oak 93.5 is the Friday Night House Party. And then WQFS is House Music Mondays with DJ Clash from time to time. But Jay Mays, thank you so much, brother, for having me. I really appreciate you, brother.
Yes, sir. And any shout outs you want to give before we wrap, and also plug your socials?
Shout out to, the family, mom, dad, everybody. Y'all know who y'all are. Love y'all. Shout out to Cool DJ Red Alert. Like I said, we are good friends. A very good man. If y'all want to follow me, hit me up on all social medias. Hit me up on Instagram under The Real DJ Mixmash. That is TheReal DJ Mixmash. That is one word. Hit me up on Facebook also under The Real DJ Mixmash. And that also, that's spaced out. Instagram is one word. Facebook is spaced out. I'm also on Threads, once again, under The Real DJ Mixmash. And back to the shout outs. We said it once, but I'm gonna say it again. Shout out to DJ Earn from 102 Jams in Greensboro for allowing this. Well, not allow for pretty much bringing this together. Shout out to Lil Vegas. I'm sure there's other people I'm missing, but those are the really. Oh, and what's it? Tasha. What's her name? Tasha. What's her name? Tasha from 102 Jams. Tasha Max from 102 Jams. So shouts to all of them.
Yeah, shout out to my boy DJ B Man.
Yes.
Certified by the heavy hitters. So if you know, you know. And this interview will be streamed on YouTube, on Beyond the Album Cover, the official YouTube channel, and on all streaming platforms. Same thing, Beyond the Album Cover on all streaming platforms. And also follow the podcast on Facebook. Same thing, facebook.com/Beyond the Album Cover. So ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big thank you, a round of applause for my bro, my good boy, DJ Mix Mash. Bro, thank you once again for coming on. We definitely will do a part 2.
I'm looking forward to it, man.
For sure.